The police called my husband called me, something went wrong. They had to pull him for the water. So we went to the hospital. And on the way to the hospital, I remember I took my Tehillim and I couldn't open it. And I kept repeating the same thing again and again and again. I kept saying, this is not the babies, this is Yossi. This is not the babies, this is Yossi. Like I was telling Hashem, and I was telling myself that my kids are divided into two. There's the 4 babies, they were sick, they died. There's the 4 healthy ones, they're healthy, they're living. This is not the babies, this is Yossi. But it was 10 years and so much agony and so much work to find okayness. And it was a very different kind of okayness. And there was always that thread of sad. It was not a small thing by any means. And I was just telling myself again and again and again, no, this is not the babies. They died. This is Yossi. He's getting married.
There are no words for losing a child. Nothing. How can one introduce an episode where someone loses 5 out of 8 of their children? Rebbetzin Dvori thought her life was just going to get easier, and then her eldest son, Yossi, drowned at the age of 23. You will get a very clear understanding and insight on how she remains hopeful still and has the strength to continue on. This episode is powered by Bitbean, the kings of software solutions, Chafetz Chaim Heritage Foundation, the most popular video on Tisha B'Av for the past 30 years, Twillory, the clothing brand every guy is talking about, and Knafayim, the ones there to help bereaving parents. This episode is in memory of Shimon David and Yaakov Shleima, as well as Miriam Sarah Bas Yaakov Moshe. Here we go. I'm Yaakov Langer, and you're listening to Inspiration for the Nation. Here we are with someone who doesn't want to be referred to as Rebbetzin Dvori Kreiman, so I don't know how to refer to you, but there's a lot to talk about and a lot of heavy conversations, but could you take me back to being a new mother and the challenges that were there?
So my husband and I are married 37 years. I think it's going to be 38 soon. And when we got married, you know, the rabbi thing, we're going to have children, 3 kids in 3 years. Before my son's option, we already had baby number 3 and healthy kids, busy young parents. Our 4th baby was born looking absolutely normal, but very weak. And I remember that the doctors looked and said that it's probably fine. It's just a baby that's a little bit weaker. But then he got weaker and weaker and weaker. We didn't know what we were looking at. And at 3.5 months, he passed away. And this was after a lot of interventions because as he got weaker, they kept trying different things. And then they said, it's a fluke. It happens. They called it failure to thrive, which basically just means that it's a baby that doesn't do what a healthy baby should do. But you can have other children. We had another baby. And when she was a day old, I was holding her and she had a seizure. And my baby that had died before had seizures also. So I recognized it immediately. Very long story short, it turned out that she had the same thing that he did. And then, of course, the whole medical situation changed. And we knew we were talking about something that, because it can repeat, is very likely hereditary. People confuse genetic and hereditary all the time. But hereditary is basically that it's passed on by the parents. But we didn't know what. We went to the Lubavitch Rebbe for a bracha. We got a very special bracha. So, Zayin gesunte Kind be'itay bizmanay. A healthy child in a set time and the right time. Our healthy child is now, Baruch Hashem, 29 years old. She's a mom, and we named her Bracha. So we had 4 healthy kids. The doctors didn't know exactly what. They knew something. They didn't know the odds. We had a lot of research. This went on for 10 years. I tell it very quickly, but it was 10 years.
I'm like strapped in and like, oh, this is a lot of stuff. But go continue, yes.
Yeah, it was a lot. The babies needed very intensive care. Especially the baby that was born after. Once we already knew that we're dealing with something that's not just failure to thrive, there was a lot more intensive testing, a lot of DNA from the whole family. We had research even out of America. I mean, we sent samples of DNA to somebody in Europe. There was really an extensive research, didn't come up with anything. And then we had a healthy baby. And we figured, okay, we're good. We have 4 healthy kids. We can have kids. Our next child was sick. And at that point, we started to get more information. That child, we ended up in a much, much better medical situation. We were working with geneticists and really high-level doctors. And we knew already at that point that we're dealing with mitochondria, which is energy, in a very simple form.
The powerhouse of the cell.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, yes. Basically what it is.
And that's in plans. I don't know if that's...
It's really very simple. What it is really is that the babies are born without the ability to generate energy. So when the food in their bodies doesn't turn into energy. Basically, it's little protons, almost like a factory. And every stage of the factory kind of moves things along. And if one proton is not doing what it's supposed to do, one enzyme is missing, basically, it's cytochrome C. Mm-hmm. And what happens is that the whole backup stops the production, and it really affects every organ in the body. Because the mitochondria is really what keeps the body moving. It keeps the energy going. The babies could not produce energy. So when they were born, they did better because they were still going on maternal energy. And as they got older and it would run out, they would have one failure after another. It got very serious. They were on life support. So this third sick baby, at this point, we knew much more. We were in Children's Hospital, a very high level of care. And at that point, we knew already that we're dealing with autosomal recessive, which is basically my husband and I share a very, very unusual mutation. No, they cannot test for it. No, Daria Sharm did not have it. And it's rare. Everybody in the world has mutations. But to have the same one is unusual if you're not related. But we did. And at that point, we consulted with a lot of doctors, rabbanim, therapists. We didn't know what to do. We were young. Should we have more children? And really, the advice that we got was one last baby. And at that point also, we were pretty confident that some of the therapies that we had, the third baby died, but after she lived longer and there was some advances made. And so we had our last baby, and I was so sure that that last baby would be healthy. The odds that we were given at that point, we knew was 25% for a sick child, 75% for healthy. So basically 1 out of 4. But it's not 1 out of 4 children. It's 1 out of 4 in every conception, every pregnancy. It's a 1 out of 4 chance for a sick child, or 25% chance, which is a good odds. Sort of. The problem is if it's a sick baby, it's a 100% sick baby. The last baby was a beautiful 8-pound little boy, full head of hair, sweet boy. He was sick. And to us, it wasn't just that we had lost a baby again. And this is after 10 years of really a lot of research and a lot of trying to figure out what to do. And even the care of the babies themselves, they were very, very sick, and they got sicker and sicker, as time went on. It was also that I was very, very young, early 30s, and it wasn't something I spoke about then, but I'm older now and I do. We knew we wouldn't have any more children. And it was devastating because, here we were, young, healthy couple, and we'd never gotten that last baby. I have a feeling no baby would have been enough to be the last baby. Women just, we want to have children. But it was very difficult for me to adjust to that. Very difficult for me to look around me and see, looks like everybody in the world was having a baby. I know it's not true, but when you don't have something, that's how it is. And we worked at it. And my husband didn't want that we be that family. People look at us and say, oh, Nebuch, they have such a sick child, which we did. We had very sick kids. Or, oh, Nebuch, half the kids in the family died. Because we had 4 healthy kids. And I really, including one miracle, that we had one that was born in the middle of all these babies, our bracha. And I didn't want to be that family that was all about the illness and death. And we worked at it. And we did a good job. My adult kids tell me that now. Our home was not an unhappy home. I struggled very much because I knew that I'm never going to have any more children. But at the same time, the flip side of that is I was so tuned in and appreciative. And we made very nice Yamim Tovim, and there was a real effort, sometimes overcompensating, but a real effort that it be a happy home. I got very involved in chinuch. I went back to school. I got degrees in education. I was teaching. I became a principal. And we really had in our head that our kids are divided into 2. We have the sick kids. We call them the babies, just one lump, the babies, and those 10 years of sick children with my beautiful bracha in the middle, and the 4 healthy ones. And the way it worked was that it's not a sort of, it's all or nothing. So the babies that were sick, they had the disorder. The healthy kids were completely clear. So we knew that they were safe. And we were grateful for that. We have a son and 3 daughters.
And we're going to get to what happens next. But I know you kind of brushed over it, but the first baby that you lost, whoa, I'm sure you didn't ever experience anything like that. What was that like for you before you knew there was something genetically going on over there?
So it was very rocky. It was frightening. Part of it also was that we didn't know what we were dealing with. So originally when he was born, he looked fine, and then he started to get weaker and weaker. So they started all the tests. And as they did the tests, they said to us, he has this problem and we don't think we can help it. So eventually, before we knew that we're dealing with a fatal disorder, we were told that we're dealing with a very handicapped child. Mm-hmm. And they tested his brain and they said limited capacity. And so we started to adjust. And every time we adjusted to something, it changed on us. So it was 3.5 months of real turmoil because at every point we heard something different. So we were very young, early 20s. I think I was 24 when he was born. And we didn't know what it was that we had to adjust to. And I remember mostly it was just terror. I remember coming to the hospital to be with him, and I would see the doctors, and I would have this urge just to turn around and run, like, because it was always bad news. The lung collapsed, or this happened, or that happened. And because we were so young, we also didn't know a lot of the terms. By the time we had a few babies, I mean, I can just insert an NG tube like nobody's business, and I have no problem with, any of that. But in the beginning, I was squeamish, I was overwhelmed and frightened. So we didn't really even deal. We more kind of just coped minute by minute. We also had 3 very young kids at home. So it was more just of almost like an insane existence. And even though they started to tell us towards the end that they don't think he's going to survive, they weren't sure themselves. So we really were thrown by it. We didn't know what hit us. And I think it's a little bit human nature also, even though we did get attached to him to a certain extent. But it was hard too, because he kind of slipped into a coma at a certain point. He wasn't a responsive baby. We were so shell-shocked, and we were hoping to have more children. It sounds almost callous, and later I learned that it doesn't work that way. But being young that way, once he died, and we realized, okay, we will go through this and we will move on. I actually wrote a letter to the hospital, and I sent it to a Rav, explaining how we believe in the Shamas, and we named him Nesanel. We named him when we buried him, because he never had a bris. He wasn't strong enough for a bris. And I explained to them that Nasan Kel, and God has given us this baby, and that whole thing. And I sent it to a Rav to check. And the Rav didn't tell me. He actually passed it on to someone else, and it ended up printed. And it was just interesting to me, because someone said to me, I read your article, because it was really explaining how we view it. But I think a lot of it was just really that we were just too young to really process.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we'll get back to the other babies, but let's fast forward to the next stages of your life. Things are, I guess, going as well as they can.
Things were going well. Mm-hmm. We really understood that the babies came through. I mean, there was always that pain of them dying, and especially that we couldn't have more. All of that. And each baby, as we had more of them, we connected to them. They were sweet, tiny people. So the grief was always there, but we were not one of those miserable, unhappy families. Because again, the flip side really of suffering is that you develop very, very deep appreciation. And we really were. So yeah, we were raising our kids. And for the most part, it was a happy home.
And your daughters, they get married? Yes,
my 2 daughters got married, one after the other, with a few months apart. Yes, and then my son Yossi was 23, and we started shidduchim by him. Yossi he's a quirky kid, very much. He loved nature, loved humor, loved words, loved his mom. Very nerdy kind of a kid. And when he was very, very much into nature. So he actually worked in Costa Rica as a learning director. He's supposed to be teaching, but they took the kids on trips, and Yossi got to go on trips, and they taught the kids scuba diving. Yossi got very into scuba diving. And then he came home, and we got busy with shidduchim. It was actually the first shidduch that came up. It was very exciting. Yossi was going out. His first date was going to be right after Simchas Torah. So we live in LA. The girl is in New York. So the plan was that Motzei Yom Tov, he's flying in. He's starting to date. So that Yom Tov, this is almost 14 years ago, that Yom Tov, my husband is a male, and he had a bris on the first day Yom Tov, a little bit far. So he drove there before Yom Tov. He was going to do the bris in the morning and walk back. He walks like these long, like people go crazy, but he can walk 2, 3, 4 hours or more. So he wasn't home the first night of Yom Tov, Shmini Atzeres night. My 2 girls were already married. So it was me and Yossi, who was 23, and my 15-year-old, my bracha Leah. And so we went to shul, and Yossi was kind of a shy kid in general. He was very much of a learner. He was very much a book guy, but because he was dating, and he was starting to date, but he had been, involved with the shidduch, he was very nervous and very excited. So I was watching him dance, and like every step that the guys are taking, Yossi's taking 2, and he's all animated and he's dancing. And finally, about midnight, it's time to go. So I come to the mechitza to get him, and he comes up to the mechitza, and he looks just a little different. Like his face is very flushed, and his eyes are bright. And my husband doesn't drink. Yossi never drank. I wasn't really sure what I was looking at, but I told him it's time to go home. So he tells me, he loved to play with words. He tells me, I'm having happy juice. I want to stay. So I said, how are you going to get home? It's already late, and it's like, he's having happy juice, and we live about 15 minutes walking from the shul. So meanwhile, his friend comes up behind him. He looks like he had even more happy juice than Yossi. He throws his arm around Yossi and he says, "Don't worry, Mrs. Kryman, I'll bring him home." Okay. I don't know. I thought it was a good idea to leave one drunkard in charge of the other. I left them. I went home. But then it got late. It was after 1 and Yossi still hadn't come home. So I told my 15-year-old, I said, we have to go back. We got to get him. So we walked back to the shul. And by that point, it's pretty much over. You know, there's only like a few guys in the back, you know, the Simchas Torah look.
Yeah.
And I'm going from one to the other and not a pretty sight. I find Yossi, his cheek is like stuck to the plastic tablecloth. He's not, you know, he's gone. And I'm tapping Yossi, Yossi. And eventually he gets up, he comes out with me. And the weather in LA is very nice. It's 1 point for LA. And at that point, it was really late already, so it was very crisp. So Yossi was still a little drunk, but he felt better. So he starts running up and down. It's La Brea Avenue, if anybody knows LA. It's like a main street. So he runs up and down the sidewalk. He's flapping his arms like a airplane. And he's shouting on top of his lungs, "Flight number, whatever, from Los Angeles to New York." And then he starts shouting the name of the girl that he's dating. We're Chabadniks. But we don't do that. And, you know, he's just all excited. Then he starts somersaulting on the filthy sidewalk. We bought him a whole new wardrobe before the dating, you know, new hat, new suit, new shoes. And he's on the sidewalk somersaulting. And it's like really late. It's really early in the morning. And I'm frustrated. And my husband's not with me, just me and my daughter and him. And I'm like, "Yossi, you're impossible." So he gets up and he says, he loved words. He says, "I'm not impossible. I'm possible. I'm possible." And the rest of the way home, I'm walking and Yossi's dancing backwards in front of me. "I'm possible. I'm possible." Eventually, I got him home. I got him to sleep. And the next morning was still Yom Tov. You know, he went to shul with his Crocs and his weekday outfit. Anyway, his old hat, you know, he trashed his hat, his suit. After Yom Tov, Yossi flies to New York. 2 weeks later, we join him. Yossi gets engaged. We start preparing for a wedding. That's the good part. It was a few weeks later, and I was a principal of the school, a junior high school in LA. And that morning was a Friday morning, and we teach the Hayom Yom. Hayom Yom is just like a word of the day. You know, it was written by the previous Chabad Rebbe. So every day comes out like the Hebrew day. It's always the same lesson on each day. So that day it's Chaf Ches Cheshvan, and the lesson is Hashgacha Pratis. Not a blade of grass will move without being part of the master plan from the time the world was created. And if this is true for even a blade of grass, how much more so, the Rebbe writes, for a human being. In other words, there's no such thing as an accident. And so I taught that. It's Hayom Yom of the day, and we had the day. And then as I'm leaving, the Kala's mother calls because the proof of the invitation came in. And we go over the invitation and we're proofing it. And you know how you do Be'ezras Hashem or Emetz Hashem. Yeah, of course, if Hashem wants it, it's just part of it. We proof the invitation, we're ready. And I started cooking for Shabbos, and then my husband called. Yossi that day was Friday, and he had gone for his certification for scuba diving. And the interesting thing with Yossi was that he wasn't into sports at all. He was not a daredevil at all. He just loved nature. And because he had gone with the camp in the summer, and he loved the fish, and he was so excited. There were so many things that he loved about nature, and he wanted to get his certification. The police called my husband called me, something went wrong. And they had to pull him for the water. So we went to the hospital. And on the way to the hospital, I remember I took my Tehillim and I couldn't open it. And I kept repeating the same thing again and again and again. I kept saying, "This is not the babies, this is Yossi. This is not the babies, this is Yossi." Like I was telling Hashem, and I was telling myself that my kids are divided into two. There's the 4 babies, they were sick, they died. There's the 4 healthy ones, they're healthy, they're living. This is not the babies, this is Yossi. And I was telling Hashem too, because you know, sometimes when you've been through something so big, and I talk quickly about the babies, but it was 10 years and so much agony and so much work to find okayness, if you will, you know. And it was a very different kind of okayness. And there was always that thread of sad. It was not a small thing by any means. And I was just telling myself again and again and again, no, this is not the babies. They died. This is Yossi. He's getting married. And then we got to the hospital and the doctors came in and they said, "We did everything we could and we're so sorry." And that was that. That was like, and there was no time. It was almost Shabbos. That was the crazy of it. And we had to go home. There was nothing we could do. There was already people coming because the truth is by the time my husband already knew, you know, I was the one that insisted we're going to the hospital because I wouldn't let him speak, basically. So, you know, denial, people say it like they're very cliched, but it's really very true. In my mind, if Yossi's in the hospital, we're going to Yossi. But people were already on their way. There was already a Sherman, like it was already moving and we had to go home. My daughter was home. There was nothing we could do in the hospital. We went home. We went home for Shabbos. We came home and the table is already set. We'd set it before. And there's 10 candles. It's a nice family, 10 candles, because I always lit for the babies. So there's the 8 candles for the kids, of me and my husband. And then there's 2 oils, because when Yossi was a little boy, I'd learned that if you light oils, it brings warmth and light. It's a skula for a son, a Talmid Chacham. So I come home and I'm looking at all these candles and I'm thinking, I can't light. I can't light. This is not a family. Most of my children are dead. I can't light. And oils, a son, like I don't have a son. But we don't do mitzvahs because they're easy or because we feel like it. And I lit the candles. I remember how much my hands shook. Like actually physically the act, it's not a hard mitzvah. It's a beautiful mitzvah. It was so difficult to give Hashem that, like to light those candles. And at the same time, it was so ingrained. We do a mitzvah. You know, I've always known, talk about Hayom Yom, it's my birthday Hayom Yom, is that a mitzvah is tzavsa v'chibur. It means connection. This is, Hashem says, and we do. That's how we connect. So I lit the candles. We had Shabbos, and on Sunday we buried Yossi in the same cemetery that already had the babies. But to finish the possible part, after the Levaya, it was exactly 6 weeks from the Levaya was exactly 6 weeks from the day he would have gotten married. It was a Sunday night. 6 weeks later would have been his wedding. I call it the almost wedding day. And the 4 babies are buried in one part of the cemetery, and then there's Yossi. And the Shiva was just crazy. I mean, I wrote about it and people find it funny because maybe it is at a certain level funny, but mostly it's just that we don't know what to do. People didn't know what to do and I didn't know what to do. And it was just some of the stuff that went on there. It reads funny in the book, but honestly, it was just really people just lost. They didn't know. But people was talking all of Shiva and I wasn't hearing most of it. I knew. Like I just knew very, very clearly, not going to be able to get up from this. And it wasn't just because Yossi and I really were very close. We got each other. We were very much with the word people in the family. It was that I had this sense of there's only so much a heart can take. You can't I knew how much work it was to come back. And I felt like I didn't have it in me. It's really draining to come back from disappointment and from grief. And this was a different level grief. This wasn't a baby. Because when the babies were sick, I used to joke, I'll take any baby. A baby's a baby, you know. It isn't true, but it doesn't matter. It was like that feeling of it was a baby. But Yossi was Yossi. He was 23. I didn't feel like I had the mental, spiritual, emotional energy for that. And I just felt like, I don't know what it's going to look like, but I can't. And the last day of Shiva was Friday afternoon. And Shiva was pretty much over. It was Friday. People were going already. There was a few stragglers hanging out. We were sitting on my patio. I have like a garden with a patio area. There's a few women still there. But really just a handful. Shiva was basically over. And I was sitting on this low chair and I'm thinking, I can't. I'm not going to do it. And my mind, it was really black. I was thinking very, very, very dark thoughts to the point that I scared myself. And I realized you got to stop thinking. Sometimes you just really have to not think. So I turned to the woman next to me. Her name is Judy. And she's a singer. She's a professional singer. And I said, sing something. And she looked at me like I'm insane. And I said, I need to not think, just sing me a song. So she got all flustered, like, what should I sing? What should I sing? So she turned to the woman next to her. It's a former student of mine. What should I sing? And I always think about this. I mean, there are how many songs in the world? Trillions, millions. I mean, I don't know. Of all the songs in the world, here's what Judy sang to me in the last few moments of Shiva. It's possible. It's possible. Everything is possible. Just keep your mind upon your goal. Turn to God with all your soul. It's possible. It's possible. And I saw Yossi dancing in the night. I'm possible. And that's really how we got up from Shiva, you know? And the truth is, when you think about it, sometimes it's not possible. Sometimes it's just not possible. But Yossi didn't say it's possible. Yossi said, I'm possible. I'm possible. That neshama, and really, the world is impossible. Think about the whole way it works. Neshamas with bodies, or us now, you know, the Jewish nation getting like, you know, what they say, like the lamb with the 70 wolves, and they all want to devour us. It's not possible. I'm possible, which is my neshama power, my connection to Hashem, each of us. So here we are.
I'm holding back so much from not crying. Wow.
Sorry, that was long.
No, please don't ever apologize. Yeah. I don't know what to say. I usually have always something to say. We're going to be right back to my conversation with Dvari, but we're going to take a little
of a lighter breather, we're going to talk about my favorite clothing brand. And many people ask me, does Twillory ever have a mega sale? Yes, they do. Don't miss Twillory's August Warehouse sale with up to 50% off site-wide on shirts, polos, pants, blazers, and more, now through Labor Day. And as I record this, I'm wearing their super comfortable, stretchy ear shirt, and they also have an ear polo. Twillory just launched these, and they are what I've been wearing every day of this summer, and they are perfect for whether you just want to go to a ball game or you're going to a shul that night. Here's the best part. You will get $18 off when you use the code word INSPIRE on your order when you spend over $136. Twillory's quality and comfort are unmatched, so head to Twillory.com and upgrade your wardrobe with the fantastic deal today. And remember, of course, to use code word INSPIRE. And I know what you're thinking. Tisha B'Av is such a hard day. I'm hungry, it's depressing, it's long. Klal Yisrael has been through so much, and it's not an easy day. When I was younger, I used to think Tisha B'Av was a day to be bored, but that's mamish, literally not what it's about. You're supposed to feel on Tisha B'Av, but it's not easy. Shul's long, and when you get home, we have so many distractions from the day. 30 years ago, the Chafetz Chaim Heritage Foundation realized that hundreds of thousands of people weren't as connected as they can be. You all know how powerful their Tisha B'Av program is, and this year is extremely unique. You can use the code word INSPIRE for 18% off your ticket on tishab'av.global and get connected with the day of Tisha B'Av. Spend Tisha B'Av with Rav Elia Brudny, Rav Pesach Kron, Rabbi Bender, Michael Rothschild, Rabbi Fran, Soldiers in Eretz Yisrael, and so many more. It is in your hands. Make this Tisha B'Av the last one and be confident that you're spending your time with real connection. Again, use the code word INSPIRE for 18% off on tishab'av.global. Now back to this week's episode.
The contrast is very wild also, that like you've experienced, having a child that you are being told, they're getting worse and worse and worse. So you have that time to kind of process.
Yeah.
And then you have this insane shock of losing your son in a moment. What's the difference there for as a mother?
So with a sick child, in some ways, it's a lot of deaths. It was really, every time we went to the hospital, it was scary because we never knew what we would hear, and it was never good news. Once in a while, we would hear something like, "Oh, she had a good night," or "Oh, his oxygen numbers are a little bit better." But overall, for the most part, it went down. So it's really a lot of hits, and that's a different kind of a trauma because you're living constantly in that. It's like every time we went to the hospital, or even when we were home, because we shifted off, we had other kids, and we didn't want our lives to be only about this. So a lot of friends took turns. We tried very much that the baby should be held a lot. And first of all, for them, it was good. While they are alive, I believe very much they should have the comfort of a human touch, voice, they should be sung to, and staff is very busy. There was a NICU, so it's and then a PICU, which is the pediatric intensive care. It's not about holding and singing. So they let people in. They used to joke about my many, many, many sisters because really it's only supposed to be family, but they were very good about it. But the bottom line is really, it's frightening. And you watch each time. And to me, it was every time I went, I understood that it's important to go and to hold them and all that. But it was scary because we never knew what we were going to hear. And it was almost never good news. And when we were home, every time the phone rang, we jumped. So there was a lot of anxiety with that. But when they died, I won't say it wasn't a shock. I think death is always a shock. Like in the book I wrote about it, I wrote we know, but not really. Like we die, but not yet. Because we all know. Everybody knows that we die, but until it hits really close to home, we can pretend. We get very involved in our lives, and we can pretend that this is the real deal. So yeah, it was a shock, but not to the extent like with Yossi. With Yossi, the envelopes for the invitations came during Shiva. I mean, we were running full force in one direction. The shock itself took a very, very long time. And a lot of bereaved moms ask me that, which is better, because I've gone through both. I don't know which is better. I only know that, thank goodness we don't get to choose. That's the first thing. But also, when a child dies suddenly like that, it takes much, much longer even to believe he's not there. I would wake up every morning and the first thought, it would come back to me again. Like I would remember again. And it just takes a really, really long time. And that's hard. I mean, shock is a whole level of trauma.
What's the moment that you got no one ever gets used to it, but like, what's the moment that you were, I don't want to like offend, like, okay, that you were like, okay, this reality is the reality. Like, when did that come in?
So first I would have to tell you the moment where I actually was able to breathe past the way that he died. Yossi drowned, basically. And in the beginning, after he died, for a while I was almost like haunted. Every time I closed my eyes, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't function. I would see this black water and Yossi trying to figure out how to get up. It wasn't true. I mean, he died on a beautiful blue day with beautiful blue water on a sunny day. And he was actually a lifeguard. We have a pool, so all my kids they're all certified in the lifeguards, but that was the image that I had because I wasn't with him when he died and I couldn't function from it. And somebody suggested this therapy, EMDR. It's a very good therapy for trauma. It's eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing. And basically what it does is it helps the body deal with trauma. So I went to this therapist and first I told her the story. And when she picked herself up off the floor, she tells me, count backwards from 20. And I'm thinking, count backwards from 20, like, she a clown, but I'm here, I paid for it, I'll do it. So I did that. And then she says, follow my fingers. And she starts making figure eights. And I'm thinking, like, this is such hocus pocus, like, And then she points to a bar and she sets lights going back and forth. And she says to me, don't move your head, just move your eyes and follow the lights. And I did that. And all of a sudden, for the first time since Yossi died, this is like quite a while later, I'm seeing him. I'm seeing him like a little boy by his bike. And I'm seeing him, he had this shtick that not shtick, it was a beautiful thing because he was very scholarly. Like he wouldn't learn from just one sefer. He had a whole pile and he had this certain look. He would be all into it. And I'm seeing him that way. And I realized afterwards, it's in the light, but the chachma was before. When you count backwards from 20 or when you're following figure eight, it kind of stops you from thinking. And you get rid of the distractions. And then you just look to the light. And I speak to people about this all the time. That what is light? It's Hashem. It's Elikus. That's before this world. There was no world. There was no challenge or gashmirs or tables or ice cream or anything. There was light. And Hashem said, I want a real world of struggle. So it's Gailalar. He rolled away the light. And what's our job? The first thing Hashem told us is, Yihar, make light. So what do? In every little situation, look to the light. And it's not this spiritual thing that you have to become all, holy and see light. It's in the little tiny things, which is like you're asking, when did I become okay? I don't think there is a crossing over. What it is I realized for the first time I was able to see Yossi differently from this EMDR. It's a very good therapy. So first of all, there's help and the help helps. So I'm a big believer in that. But I realized that you can make little pockets of okayness and even more than okayness. And what it is like I would have days when I would wake up and I would feel so sorry for myself. And then I would realize that if I'm looking miserable and I can do a real good pity party, then my husband, who somebody has to keep functioning, who's going about and he's doing his work, is going to carry not only the weight of the loss, but also worrying about me. So I can take a minute and smile at him before he leaves the house. Or if I'm not feeling very motivated to daven, I could say, okay, I'll say something. I'll say a few brachas. I'll learn a few lines of a shir. If I'm feeling like I have less, I'll still think about someone else and maybe make one phone call, give a little. It's a pocket of light, a little bit. And in that is the healing.
This is you're dropping truth bombs. First of all, I'm not finished the book yet, but you're a fantastic writer.
Thank you.
So I will have a link in the show notes for anyone who wants to pick up your book, even if I'm not. And I would want to even read a part of it. But in the book, you mentioned that Yossi approached you and your husband about going. And your husband was not happy and he said, don't go. And you said, nah, it's fine. Was there a guilt that you felt when you found out that he passed away?
Yes, this is a biggie. This is my Tisha B'Av story.
Okay, let's do the Tisha B'Av story.
What happened was that Yossi came to our room a few days before and he was very excited about just how beautiful the fish is. And he wants to go scuba diving and he has a chart and the chart shows exactly what to do. And my husband said, I don't like it. I don't want you to do it. And I said, he's 23. He gets to decide. And Yossi went. So here's what happened. What happened was Yossi's birthday is Tisha B'Av. But I want to go back actually before that. During the Shiva, there was a woman who had never met Yossi, but some of Yossi's friends were there and people were telling stories. And she comes up to me and she tells me, your son was a tzaddik. And the comment bothered me and I couldn't even articulate why. And I was really not very well behaved or gracious during Shiva. So she says, your son was a tzaddik. And I say, well, he played his drums too loudly. I guess he was more like mediocre. But, and I was trying to like process it, like what bothered me. And I realized we have this mentality that like if a perfect child dies, and Yossi was a pretty cool, you know, he learned and he was funny and he was smart and he loved family. He was a really cool person, a very special person, sense of humor. But it doesn't work like that. It's not like, oh, if he was so perfect and he died, it's a very big loss. And if it was less perfect, you know, because he didn't have to be perfect for me to love him. And I don't have to be perfect to be worthy of being accepted, of having a relationship. So the first Tisha B'Av after Yossi died was really, really hard. He was born on Tisha B'Av. And I always say, look at the one day of the year where we are at our most, you would say, Hashem shows you, you know, you're not really, I don't want to say not lovable because we are loved, but the one day of the year where Hashem really disciplines us, you know, I will show you, I'll give you a lesson, you know, I'll teach you. And it's really Tisha B'Av. So it says about Tisha B'Av that the Yidden were complaining and they said, B'sinas Hashem, Osanu, Hashem hates us. And Rashi writes there, V'hu haya ahev eschem, but he loves you. And it always stuck with me. Yossi, when he was younger, I used to tell him that I became a mom on Tisha B'Av. It's very, very hard to be sad on his birthday. And we would talk about it every year at Tisha B'Av, you know, it's such a sad day, but I became a mom. The first Tisha B'Av after Yossi died was so, so devastating because we had so many memories of that's when he was born and it was the first one without him in the world. And so my friends came over and I was talking to my friend and my husband was talking to the husband. And all of a sudden I hear Yossi's voice and it was really, really hard for me. It's still difficult. I almost never listen to it or watch his videos. It's too much life for a child who's not here. I know many people, you know, I speak to other bereaved moms and they can't stop. I can look at his picture, I could talk about him, I could tell stories. I don't handle hearing him or seeing him even now. And it's a lot of years. And I look like it shocked me. And I see my husband's holding up a video and Yossi's teaching and he had that certain way about him always. He was so into it. And I'm like, turn it off, turn it off. So my husband shuts it off and that's that. And then eventually the friends leave and we can't sleep, which happened a lot that first year. It's part of the grief process is just inability to sleep. We had it by the babies too, so I knew. And Yossi had been born at 3:02 a.m. So at 3:02, my husband and I are like, can you believe it? And we became parents and all that. And then grief sometimes also brings out hard edges. I said to my husband, I really didn't like that you showed the video tonight. So my husband said to me, well, I really didn't like that you let him go scuba diving.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I ran out of the house. I have a minivan in the driveway and, you know, a minivan is not like a sports car. I backed out. I pushed the accelerator all the way down. I went out of there like a maniac. I was the expression, I come out of my kalim. I didn't know what to do with myself. And I'm driving around and around and around for hours. And my husband keeps calling me and I'm not ready to come home. I'm just driving around. And I'm trying to process this and thinking, what if I'd stood with my husband and said, don't go. We both really don't want you to go. And then I thought, but a 23-year-old, it's tricky with adult children. Like I was put in a situation, I wasn't excited about the scuba diving, but I also felt like, I don't know if we can stop him from this. He's so passionate. I wasn't sure. And I'm thinking, and even if I was wrong, I made a mistake. Obviously, I made a mistake. The kid died. The punishment seems a little bit out of proportion for a poor judgment here. It wasn't anything, you know. And I'm going around, I'm trying to talk to Hashem, and I'm trying to figure it out. And all I did was exhaust myself. And finally, after hours, I come home. My husband's waiting by the gate. And when I pulled in, he's such a mensch. When I pulled in, he said to me, you know, you can't drive like that. You can hurt yourself. You can hurt someone else. And I said, you're right. And then I said to him, you know, I don't know if Yossi would have listened if I would have also said it. He was a good kid, but he was 23 and he was very passionate. So I said, I don't know if he would have not gone, if both of us would have said together, don't go. But I know this. I can't hear it again. I can't carry the weight, whether it's true or not, it doesn't matter. I can't hear again that I might have been able to prevent him from dying. So I can't hear that again. My husband said one word. Okay. It's 12 years, almost 13. He's never brought it up again. And I was thinking about Tisha B'Av. It's really about that. you're imperfect. It's the day that Rashi testifies about us. V'hu haya ohev eschem. I love you. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to get it right every time. You're worthy of love. So that's the marriage, and that's what holds it. It's that safety of you can make such a drastic mistake that it costs the life of our son, and my husband will never bring it up again.
Yeah, I don't think you made a mistake. Who am I over here to?
We don't know.
It was he wasn't he was meant. Hashem wanted him back. There's nothing that you could have said or done that would have changed that.
Yeah. There's a plan for every life. I asked Rabbanim this a lot, kind of hounded them and drove them crazy, because there are certain places in Gemara, I was told, where a person can change by doing dangerous things. And was this a dangerous thing? Was it not a dangerous thing? It's tricky, but it happened. And I knew that it wouldn't be useful for me to delve into that. I mean, many times people go through that and they ask me that, if only, and right now we have to deal with what's in front of us. So what was in front of me and my husband is that our son died, and that we can't go there anyway. No point.
We'll be right back, and a really, really memorable moment is coming up. But as a podcaster and business owner, I know how crucial it is to have the right software to help my business scale and grow. And that's why I recommend BitBean. BitBean specializes in creating custom software solutions tailored to your unique needs, ensuring your business can expand seamlessly. Take, for example, unnamed Torah app designed to offer Torah study and shul programming. This organization turned to BitBean to create a platform that's user-friendly, robust, and scalable. BitBean delivered a custom solution that provides easy access to Torah teachings, events, videos, scheduling, community engagement features, and so much more, all while ensuring top-notch security and performance. With BitBean's expertise, this app has been able to reach a global audience, providing invaluable resources and programming to users everywhere. If you're looking to elevate your business with tailor-made software that meets your exact needs, BitBean is the partner you need. So visit bitbean.com and see how they will help your business grow. And before we dive back in, it's clear that Dvayri went through unfathomable challenges, and we should all never go through something like that. But how can we help people who have lost a child, who had a really difficult pregnancy or a very complicated situation? Let me tell you about You and I Kinefayim, a heartfelt program designed to ease the heartbreak of pregnancy loss with compassion and unconditional support. For every woman facing the devastating reality of losing a pregnancy, Kinefayim offers a lifeline of hope and healing. You might think pregnancy loss is rare, but in every group of 5 women, at least one has suffered this silent tragedy. She may be sitting at your table in shul, chatting with you in the park, or waiting with you at the bus stop. Behind her smile, there's a story of pain and loss that she might never share. Kinefayim steps in when there seems to be no way to hold the pain. Every woman and man should have the space and support to grieve in her or his own way, on their own timeline. Kinefayim provides 24-hour guidance and practical support for couples experiencing pregnancy loss, baby loss, and reproductive trauma. Their team of licensed professionals and volunteers, all whom have specialized training in women's health and bereavement care, are here to guide you through the darkness. They offer medical referrals, patient advocacy, emotional doula services, and curated care packages to support you through miscarriage, stillbirth, and postpartum care. Kinefayim holds your hand and offers their hearts every step of the way. With over 3,500 women helped each year and many support groups for men and women in Kinefayim's 10 international locations, your donation and volunteer efforts can help give every hurting woman wings of hope. Join us in making a difference. The You and I Kinefayim program is the latest way everyone can be there for their sisters going through heartbreak. Kinefayim's You and I program has already really powerfully impacted the Jewish nation. Believe me, you could help. You can join the 24-hour Tehillim room to daven for the Kinefayim community. You can be matched with a specific Kinefayim sister to daven for by joining the Name Sister Group. And of course, you can also choose to donate whatever you can to help support this crucial mission financially. If you'd like to be there to help, and believe me, you can change someone's life by helping in even a small way, send an email to info@kinefayimwings.org or visit youandIkinefayim.org. They actually just updated the website. Go check it out. It's really impressive and fill out the form. Together, we can lift each other up and provide the care and support that every woman deserves. And I know like you're watching this episode and it's heavy and it's difficult and it's hard and you feel so bad. Take that emotion that you're seeing with what Devari went through and realize so many people go through so many challenges, and it's your way of telling Hashem, I care for your children. I want to be of help. So go to the website. Of course, there's links below, and be there to help those in need.
I want to read a part from your book. There's a lot. Honestly, someone should read it. I'm going to try getting through it, but this like probably shouldn't have been reading on Shabbos because it made me cry a lot. Okay, here we go. I was cooking when he came in. Mommy, when I set up my apartment in New York, how will I know what to buy? All this kitchen stuff, where do we start? Took my finger off the pulse of the food processor. That's the fun part. I'll come to New York to shop with you and Shayna. I have an idea. He threw one arm up in a giddy arc. You've got so much stuff in this kitchen. Why don't I take what I need from here? Sure, let me know what you want to take. I saw the first yellow Post-it note on the handle on the fridge. He scribbled on it. Yossi and Shayna. I turned and saw Post-it notes on the wine rack, bar stools, countertops, blender, oven, sink, toaster, kettle, and even on the cutlery drawers. Yossi giggled. I tagged what we'll take. Everywhere, Sonny squares his name with hers. I said, isn't it amazing that someone whom you don't know for most of your life is going to be the most important person in the world to you? And then he responds, you're the most important person in the world to me, Mommy. I wanted to cry and hug him and dance. Instead, I spoke very slowly. Yossi, you're getting married. If your mother is the most important person in the world to you, ... He said, my marriage? That's a separate story. Right now in this kitchen, you're the most important person in the world to me. What happened to the yellow Post-it notes? I must have thrown them out. The sticky treasures of when he told me I was the most important person in the world to him. Last night was the last night. No, ripping through me, out of me, like the force of new life at the entry of this world, primal shrill. I screamed, no, 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 and the car shutters. You speak about like the last Shabbos that you...
Yeah, that was a different one. Yeah, this was the Thursday night before he died.
Yeah, this is before, but I'm trying to get away from it because it's making me very sad. So I'll go with a different sad part.
The last Shabbos, yeah.
You got to have one more Shabbos. I mean, you didn't know at the point, but
so that was the miracle. Really, we had so many of them, like just ways of seeing Hashem, and I know that this happens to everybody. We just have to open our eyes and see them. And people say that. How do I feel close to Hashem when I'm so angry or when I'm hurting? And I realized that if I just allow myself to see, Hashem is so close. So what happened with Yossi was that there's this Shabbaton that I go to every year. And I've been going, before he died, I've been going for like 18 years. And every year, it's once a year, it's like about 100 women in the community and we get together and there's different Torah and it's just women and it's just a beautiful time for togetherness and for some uplifting. So the week of the Shabbaton, I told Yossi, I'm not going to be home Shabbos. I'm going to the Shabbaton. And he's like, what? I don't want you to be home. Don't go. I said, what do you mean don't go? I always go. I'm sharing a room with someone I already committed and I'm speaking Friday night. I have to go. Don't go, don't go. He kept insisting. And it was like, it didn't make any sense. I said, and he's like, I want you home for Shabbos. I said, I'll be home next Shabbos. But he was nudging me. And I didn't understand it. I've been going since he's little. But it bothered me. I'm like, the whole week I'm back and forth. I didn't know what to do. Friday, I made up my mind and I stayed home for Shabbos. And we had a really nice Shabbos. It was only family because I wasn't supposed to be home. So we didn't have guests. My nephews were there and just my kids. And it was just a very nice Shabbos. And it was Yossi's last Shabbos. And he died the next week. And afterwards, I remember thinking, like, how did he know to insist? Because the Shabbaton was just something we'd always done. Why did he nudge me to stay? And why did I even, it made no sense. He's 23. He would have been fine with my husband. I left him food. Why did I give in? And I realized that Hashem just guides us. And we had that beautiful last Shabbos. There were so many of these stories where we really felt Hashem is right here. And we're not alone. And every time I think of those things, they give me strength. Because people, they're like, I feel so lost. I'm so afraid. Open your eyes. Hashem is right here. If we allow ourselves, there are so many ways we can see it.
Do you feel Yossi's presence in your life now?
All the time. All the time. I am his mom. What happened was when, I'll tell you where every time I feel like I'm losing it a bit, he's there. There are so many stories. But I'll tell you one more that's a little bit, also gave me a sense of just Hashem there. We became grandparents the week that we finished Kaddish for Yossi. And this boy chick is soon going to be bar mitzvah. It's amazing how the years have gone. But I knew during my daughter, the baby was born. We do Kaddish for 11 months minus the day. He was born like 11 months, a little under 11 months after Yossi died. And there's a special bracha to having a boy. We knew it was a boy before. My daughter gifted us with that. There's a miracle in the way he was born, which is also in there, a very creepy tzfat story. But bottom line is we have this beautiful baby boy. And I was very emotional. My daughter, that's the one that lives in London. And it was our first grandchild. I had waited so many years for a healthy baby in the family. So there was all that emotion of a healthy baby. And then there was a big weight in a way because I wanted to be happy, wonderful Bubby, but I was still so heartbroken. And then there was the issue with the name because I knew that he would be Yosef plus another name. Yossi only had one name, just Yosef. But we always visualize having a grandchild. We don't visualize having a grandchild named for a child. And I felt it was just so hard because, first of all, we were finishing Kaddish, which means technically we weren't really in Avelis anymore. And I didn't feel ready to not be in Avelis. It was like the neshama is ready to move on, but I felt like the parents of the neshama are not. And I also felt in a way I was losing him a little bit because I read a little bit about neshamas and I knew that after that first year, the neshama is moving away. And I felt like as much as that's good for him, I was losing my being his mother, like that connection. And once a name is given, like you asked me, when did it really sink in? When the name is given, if someone is named after someone, that person is gone. So we flew to London. We were exhausted, but we went to London. I remember the morning of the bris, like we were like in a daze because we had come to London and I was very busy taking care of my daughter and this delicious baby. So there was a lot of joy, but all this feelings also. And the morning of the bris, we realized everybody was so exhausted. It didn't occur to us till, Mamish, it's time to go to the bris, that we're not going to fit in the car. It was a first baby. My son-in-law and my daughter have a tiny car. And there's me, my husband, my teenage daughter, then, the baby. And so we decided that my son-in-law would drive my husband. He's the male, he's got to go. And he wants to go for Minyan. And my daughter, who just had the baby. And me and my teenage daughter and the baby with this, it's London. And they call them buggies, this big chariot thing, which is like the carriage. We're going to walk to the shul. And because we're not natives in London, so my mechutin took care of the actual arrangements. I was taking care of the baby and the mommy, and he made the arrangements for the bris. He found the place. He did that. He's a Londoner. He's a local. So my son-in-law had to show me where to go. So he made me a map. Go here, 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 and he wrote the address. And we're walking. It was a beautiful day. It was Elul, and we're pushing this big, beautiful buggy with this delicious baby. And we're walking to the bris, and I am so torn. And mostly what I'm thinking about is the name. I want it because that's how we honor Yossi, and it's ripping me apart because it feels like a step away from Yossi. I'm losing Yossi. We're naming after him already. And at the same time, this baby's so beautiful, and I'm just like all over the place, and I'm really sad. And I'm sad that I'm sad, and it's just so difficult. And I just felt far from him at that point. Like once you start naming after them, he's not the only Yossi. We're going to have... And I come to the address of the bris, and I hadn't known anything before because my mechutin arranged it. He just gave us an address. If anyone's in Hendon, you can look it up. It's near Golders Green in London. There's this beautiful shul, Sephardi shul. It's got a big white wall and then black letters on the wall in huge. Eid Yosef Chai. And we walk in and we name the baby Yosef Meir. So I felt him so much at that moment. I felt like he's here. We're naming after him and he's gone. So you were asking me, when did it really, you asked me before, like when did it sink in? We never really stopped being his parents. I am Yossi's mother. It's changed. But when you really get down to it, all of us are more neshama than body. Like we always say, oh, I'm a body and I have a neshama. Not really. We're neshamas who came in this world to do work. In order to do that work in this world, we have to have a body. So we're neshamas who have bodies. It's really how it works. And so the connection becomes different. I had it to a certain extent with the babies, but not the same way because I didn't know them as people. Mm-hmm. So in some way, they were more neshamas to me because they were like wisps. They didn't live long enough. It was more of a spiritual connection and a lot of one way I didn't get back. But with Yossi, I feel his presence all the time. It's just different. It's spiritual.
It's such a weird dance that you have to do because like one end, like he's your bechar, he's your baby, he's your person, and like you had such a special relationship with him. But there's also another side of like sadly he passed away. He's not here. He's in a better place. He's not so like he's great.
Yeah.
But you're still here, and like you have to say he's always going to be with you, but you also like have to say goodbye in order so you could just live and move on. And how does one do that? One like there's someone they love so much and they don't want to say goodbye to them because
I don't think you say goodbye. I haven't.
So how do you move on though? Like you clearly
with it. I think that for everyone who's gone through a loss, they find a way to create some meaning. Otherwise, they sink into despair. And it can be very private. I mean, some people do very big things. All these foundations and all these little nishmas are coming from a desperate need, a healthy one. It's not unhealthy. A need to say this person was here and made an impact, and I want him or her remembered. And that's very, very important. But I think it's also that the relationship changes. Actually, I was in Israel at some point. We went there quite a few times after Yossi died. And at one point I was in a room, I went through some bereavement things. And somebody asked in the room, everybody in that room had lost a child. A lot of them some of them had been killed. It was not for children who had been killed in the war. It was way before this, but there had been some terrorist victims of terror. And there were quite a few who had been very sick, and then a few accidents, a whole room of people. And at some point, somebody asked the room, it's about, I think, 45 people in the room. They asked, if you had a choice to never have had your child at all or to have had your child and lost a child, what would you pick? And it was shocking to me. The room was about split in half.
I had this question in my mind, but I'm scared.
Yeah.
I would never ask
So
it. So
somebody
I'm
asked
so
it.
happy you are bringing this up. Yes.
So the room was almost half. I don't know exactly, but like it was very close to half. Some people said no because there was so much suffering and all that, and other people said no, I would never. I want my child. And people were just giving their different answers. And I said, I can't answer that question because when Yossi was born, I changed. I became a mom. Raising Yossi changed me. Losing Yossi changed me. I don't know who that woman would be if I hadn't had him and lost him. So I can't answer what I would have preferred because I wouldn't be me. He shaped me, raising him and then losing him. So I feel like the journeys are really intertwined. We're not a bunch of random, this parent, this child. No, our neshamas are connected, and that's forever. So I think that we have no choice when we lose someone that we love. And again, I'm talking about the healthier way. Some people say, well, I know someone who never got over it. Very often when people say things like that, there is an underlying tendency to depression or to despair. For the most part, we get up and we go on. We can be sad, we can be broken, we can be angry, bitter, jealous, all those things. But for the most part, unless there's really a very strong tendency towards depression or something like that, I'm talking even possibly clinical. I'm not an expert or a doctor, but I know if I speak to so many people, there's a will to keep living and to keep the person alive. And particularly when it's a child who didn't leave children, there's a very strong drive to, I always say, wave the flag of Yossi. So we find a way to live with him. I am Yossi's mom. I don't walk around crying about him all the time. So once in a while something will trigger and there's a sadness, but for the most part, there's a sense of connection, soul connection. And because as Frum Jews, we know that we are neshamas before this world and after. We know that we leave this world. And we know that neshamas are forever. So knowing that, it's a tremendous comfort.
Right. You said there's moments that you get triggered. Do you, throughout the year, like potentially randomly cry about Yossi? Or not at this point?
What usually happens is something else will happen, some other disappointment. And we've had some big setbacks in our lives. Some of them have been serious. And I'll turn to Hashem and I'm like, really? Are you kidding me? And it brings up the other stuff, which is why when Yossi died, I couldn't stop thinking about the babies. So I don't wake up in the morning and cry about Yossi. Tisha B'Av is coming. It's Yossi's birthday. But honestly, I'm probably going to figure out, how am I going to get through the day without getting dehydrated? It's not what it was in the beginning. I think because I was given the gift, my husband was very good about it, and I had the support that I was really able to process and grieve properly. Also because of the babies I knew, because by the babies I had done so much pushing away and I'll just have another healthy baby. And later I realized it doesn't work like that. We don't replace people and, close the door. So I knew enough about grief to know with Yossi that I needed to allow myself to sit with it. And hence the book, which came from the journal, which came from a year of really just grieving. I was a principal of a school. I didn't go back. I never made the decision not to go back. I just didn't go back. And then by the time the year was over, I was being asked to speak and I was writing, and that we were in that different zone. But bottom line is, I feel like usually if you give the grief the space that it needs and you don't rush back, you can allow your body to know that it happened and it won't be popping up all the time. But when something else happens, any disappointment, there's that sense of, it's not so much sad that I need to cry. There's more a weariness and a sense of just being banged up. And I deal with it. You pick up tools. You know, I'm kind of an old hand at it. So I pick up tools and I've learned to ask, okay, what's being asked of me right now? What does this particular situation warrant? Do I need to worry myself into crazy? Do I need to do something? Do I need to feel the sadness? I got that really from the babies first because it was 10 years of it. So we had no choice. And definitely after Yossi.
I have a bunch of questions that I'm not going to ask because it's about your family and they're not here. You're here. I'm curious though, in terms of your relationship with your husband, you know, when someone loses a child or someone has sick children, it's such a, or anyone's sick, it's such a strain on the relationship. I think, like, you know, when someone's younger, they think like, oh, if someone's sick or someone like, it's going to make everything easier. Like, no. It makes everything more intense and it could go one way or the other. Did you find extra challenges in your marriage after Yossi died, or did it bring you together more?
So other than the whole Tisha B'Av story, I think I just got lucky. My husband is really a mensch. But it also took me a while to realize that sometimes when people are going through grief, they're not only dealing with their own loss, there's terror about what will happen to the other person. And I didn't realize how hard that was for him. It's also sad, unfortunately, we do that a lot. We always ask the husband how the wife is doing. We don't give fathers enough space for their own grief, and therefore they don't always allow themselves to really feel it. And that's something that we had to learn. Somebody said to me once, and in the beginning I said that can't be, and then I realized it's really true. We don't become completely different people in the way that our whole personalities change. If we were generally positive or sensitive or caring, after a loss, we come back to that. A good marriage will be a good marriage. It'll weather it if there is genuine sensitivity and just a respectful relationship. So I got lucky. And that's really how it went. But I did notice in general that we are a little more tender with each other. We're more careful because we know how much, you know, each of us have been through. I also noticed, it took me a while to recognize that my other kids, my healthy children, were grappling not only with their own loss, they lost a brother, but what was really driving them, and it helped me once they were old enough and we really could talk about it, I talked to so many bereaved families, and this is something that they don't realize that it helps just to hear, is that their fear is not just for their own sadness, they're worried about what will happen to their parents. I had grown kids, and one was a teenager and the others were older, but they were terrified that I wouldn't be able to weather it, and they still wanted a mother and a father. So it's important to recognize that it's not just the loss. My husband was terrified that I wouldn't come back from it. I didn't know enough. I didn't realize that. I was so caught up in my own whirlwind of grief. It took a while to recognize that he's so scared. So that's where the communication is helpful.
Do you like vision Yossi with your babies, like him holding them?
I do. We always joke because I have no sense of direction. I mean, I'm a terrible. I get lost all the time, and we always talk about.
You literally call on the way here.
Yes,
like,
exactly. Where are we going? So I'm just not good at that. So we talk about like when the neshamas have to go to Shemayim. So it says the neshamas that you know will come and escort you. And I'm thinking, oh, good. Yossi's going to come and say, "Mommy, I know you're going to get lost." And just like, I got you. Come here. But I believe very much. I mean, it's not my belief. We know the neshamas are connected, and there's no random. It doesn't work like that. So if neshamas are connected, then yes, neshamas, he will be there. He is with the babies. I've had some very strange but beautiful connections with other women who have lost children, and just the way that we were brought together. And it's almost impossible to ignore. So I trust in that. Yeah, very much.
I'm going to finish off with this question that, unless there's more, I mean, there's always more. It's hard to put this all in like an hour. But what advice would you give to yourself maybe a little before you lost your first baby? Like for everything that's about to happen, like what would you tell your younger self?
That's a really good question. I would remind myself that as long as I can find what's true, I will be okay. Meaning, if we can really trust that Hashem runs the world and that the neshamas are real and that we can tap into those truths, then even though it might be scary and very, very sad, I will be okay. And I think that's something that we can all remind ourselves now also. I mean, it's a very scary time as a nation. If we just go, it always comes back to the same things. Go back to the truths. Hashem runs the world, right? There's a plan for every neshama. And if we remember that, then we don't fall into this deep despair of what are we going to do and how we're going to manage them, because it's scary. So I think I would just say, go for the truth, which is the realness of Hashem and the forever of neshama.
Beautiful. If someone wants to contact you, they want to send you a note, they want to get you to speak, they want to buy your book, where's the best place to find you?
DevoriKreiman.com.
Simple enough. Okay, put a link in the show notes. Thank you so much for coming and doing this.
Thank you for having me.
Wow. Thanks for watching this powerful episode. Please leave in the comments the word powerful. Share your thoughts in the comment section. We see and read every comment, and it's a place that you and other podcast watchers can talk amongst yourselves about the episode, and we've seen a lot of people really enjoying that. And before I get to my last remarks, I want to remind you all that Bitbean is the best software solutions team you'll ever need. Go ahead and watch the Chafetz Chaim Heritage Foundation's incredible video. Of course, use code word INSPIRE for 18% off. And you can also use the code word INSPIRE for Twillory when you spend $136 over. Go try their ear shirts. And of course, Kinefayim, the one there to help bereaving parents. Go and see what they're doing. Please go support them. There are links below for all our sponsors. Now, you're likely watching this on the saddest day of the year. And whichever day you're watching this, I'm sure this episode moved you in a very powerful way. I absolutely lost it when she spoke about seeing that line on the wall by the shul. Devari has been through more than one can ever fathom, and I think it's so easy to get bogged down with life. Sometimes we have the greatest excuse to sit in our rooms and never leave, but she didn't let the loss of her 5 children stop her. Inspiration usually seems very bubbly and magical, and at times it may be, but true inspiration comes out of some of the darkest moments at times in life where we have a choice. Do we let the darkness win, or do we push on, find the light, and cling on to Hashem? Remember, inspiration is everywhere. L'chaim. Living L'chaim.